All right, it's the day after Christmas 2018, and got my Olympia SF and my first draft of my cold hard type project typewriter story that I'm going to go over to a coffee shop and try to work on transcribing all the edits, all the handmade edits. All right, so we had family over Christmas Eve, had a huge dinner, and people stayed late. We had people sleeping over. I think we had 4 guests sleeping in our house. And then Christmas Day, I spent all day in my pajamas. Didn't go out hardly. And I worked on the cold hard type story, and I got a rough draft, a first draft finished of that project. It's about 8 typed pages that double spaced. If I condense this down into the single spaced of the page size that Richard Polt requires for the project, then it's going to be, I think, well within the limit, the page limit. So I'm going to sit here. I did a bunch of hand edits yesterday after I finished typing it, mainly dealing with like tenses. I was mixing past and present tense, and I wanted to write the story in present tense. So I had to go back and change a bunch of stuff. So I'm going to sit here at Rusta's Gold Coffee Shop, and I'm going to rewrite the whole thing, retype it. I brought the Olympia SF. I wanted to type it on a Pica-sized machine. I need a cup of coffee. Well, meanwhile, about 2.5 hours later, here I am. I finished typing up that first draft into a second draft with the Olympia SF, and I did 1.5 spacing instead of 2-line spacing, and still managed about 7 pages. And of course reread it and found a few more typos, but that's why we do drafts anyways. But I'm kind of happy with where the story went to. I didn't structure the story ahead of time, so I didn't really know how it was going to end. But luckily, the preparations that I had made in kind of working out the background of what this world, this fictional world is like, it kind of helped inform me as to what might happen and what the character might do. And so anyways, it was kind of cool. I was glad I did that background work for the last few weeks. But it's cold out here, rainy, a little bit of snow last night and this morning, but now I'm hungry. I've had 2.5 cups of coffee, and guess I need to go get something to eat. Well, I did the first draft of my story yesterday, Christmas Day, on the Smith Corona Skywriter, and I typed it on standard letter size paper, double spaced. But today I brought my Olympia SF, and I hadn't used it in a while for an extended writing session. And I really enjoyed it. I had forgotten how nice the touch is. I can really fly on that machine there, and it's pretty cool. It is a bit louder than the Skywriter, so I had maybe 3 or 4 people that made positive comments to me about the writing, about the typing sound and everything. They all liked it. So I was able to take my initial story that I wrote on the Skywriter, the blue ink ribbon Skywriter, and I did some editing. This was 8 pages, as I indicated earlier, 8 pages of double-spaced writing, and I was able to get it down to 7 pages at 1.5 line spacing on the Olympia SF, and I have still to do more corrections, a few typographical errors, and there's also something I need to add somewhere in the middle of the story that explains a little bit better the ending of the story, I think. But I think I'm well along with the process of this story that is being written for the cold hard type crowdsourced book that Richard Polt has commissioned us in the typewriter community to help contribute stories to. One of the things I noticed about the writing process is, of course, my initial draft I went through and did some red line editing of, but today as I was transcribing it onto a second revision, I found that I was doing a little bit more changing of some of the phrases and verbiage in parts of the story. A second look at the language sometimes helps you, maybe a day later in a different setting, it helps you look at it a little bit fresher and you realize, oh, okay, well, maybe that sentence is not quite right, I should change it. So as I was going, I was still doing a few more edits and changes to it as I was retyping it. I'd been going to Rusta's Gold Coffee Shop consistently, probably every week, I think, for the last month at least. And it's proven to be an interesting test case, an interesting experiment in typing in public coffee shops. And so one reason is because it's the same coffee shop every time. The second reason is it is kind of hard surfaces, sound bounces around easy. And so that makes it an interesting test case. But up until today, I think for the last month or so, I've been using exclusively the Brother EP20 thermal electronic typewriter. And that typewriter, of course, is nearly dead silent, extremely quiet. So it was interesting comparing the experience with having typed with that machine over the last month with today's experience of typing with the Olympia SF, which is not the quietest typewriter in my collection. It's certainly, the Olympia garnered more attention today than I have with the Brother in past weeks, but all the attention that was brought to me was positive in nature, so I like that. I was encouraged by that. Now, I'm sure there's some people that might have been irritated by it, but they were polite enough not to say anything. So, interesting experiment, though. Going to a typewriter-friendly coffee shop, the people that own the coffee shop and a lot of the people that own the little booths of artisan wares and whatnot, the people that did talk to me were very positive about it. So it's a very agreeable place for typewriters, and but I thought it was a very good test case. Now, should mention in January, we're going to have the kickoff meeting of the Albuquerque Typewriter Society at this same coffee shop. So another good reason that I've chosen that coffee shop is because it seems to be typewriter friendly. But an interesting experiment nonetheless. Now, one of the things I did with the preparatory work on this story was I had decided finally, after struggling for a couple weeks on figuring out what kind of a world does this story take place in, I finally decided that I was going to use essentially the kind of background of what I call Loser's Blend storyline. So I've written a number of short stories over the years that involve this fictional coffee shop that I call Loser's Blend. And the name of that coffee shop is a play on the name of a real coffee shop here in Albuquerque that's called Winning Coffee. It's informed a little bit by the worlds of William Gibson, the science fiction author. So there's a little bit of that, a little bit of the bohemian, urban grunge kind of atmosphere to my story, taking place in the near future where electronic surveillance and personal mobile devices are ubiquitous. So that's kind of the setting for the story, and I think it's worked out pretty well. So I'm excited about it. Well, it's a cold day in Albuquerque. A little bit of snow this morning, some rain. The mountain's full of snow, and it'll probably be really cold tomorrow morning. But that's it. This is not a vlog. Have yourselves a great day. Stay creative, and until next time, bye-bye for now.